right, good evening, guys. Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is the nightly strategy podcast for Saturday night. Excuse me, September 18th, 2021. So we'll be looking at some swing trade frames. Had a good lunch this afternoon with Dr. Tharp and Kala, his wife. They were heading back to North Carolina from Las Vegas, and they made time to stop in and see us on the way back. And we had a pretty good hour-long lunch chat about some very exciting developments at the Tharp Institute. I agreed to teach the systems thinking course for them, and to reinstitute the swing trade course, the structured swing trade course that I have been teaching for them, and to develop some home study products from the live trading workshops that we've done over the past 10 years. I am going to need some interns to work on that. That would be interested in putting together learning packages, and so I'll be sending out a note on that. Wanted you guys to get the first chance to hear that. So interesting times. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the review of some trade frames. This is from Rich. Is Rich on tonight? Yes, there's Rich. So Rich has taken the approach of the essentially leveraging the information that we get from SPY. So when we look at SPY, we noticed in last night's podcast that we have a excuse me. We have a critical state forming here in SPY right around the close, and that we have a significant sell-off from the high. There is a significant moves available to the downside if this support level breaks, and so we have a perfect definition of a critical state: a larger than normal probability of strong moves in either direction in short periods of time, with something like an equal probability of the move. And so what that means, and so in a critical state, the least likely result is a sideways quiet channel happening immediately. So to get to that critical state, what we had to have was a large sell-off, a large move reasonably available for a continuation of the sell-off, a reasonable opportunity like a channeling or overreaction that would take us back to the top of the trading range, and the increasing volatility of the last 10 days means that the market is agitated and is already prone to large follow-through moves that start with trigger moves. So that creates the conditions for a critical state. So we're perfectly postured for that. So Rich's trade frame here in SPXL is a triple leveraged ETF that takes a look at exactly that same condition. And so you can see that he's shown here that amazing multi-year move on a weekly charts that has moved up the stack from the COVID sell-off through one hesitation point, second leg, third leg, and what we've got is a pullback to the Z1 on the weekly chart. So if we're going to look at that, we would say, well, that little weekly pullback in every one of these cases. This one went a little farther. That one as far as the Bollinger Band mean. But this one worked. So every one of the, once we broke out of that Z3 pinch, and we started getting this long, strong trend. Notice that the RL90, which had been flat, now became a trending indicator. Here, where the RL90 crossed the RL270, you get an even stronger signal that the trend is moving out favorably. So the fractal nature of the regression line fractal framework is really clearly in evidence on the weekly basis. That's going to be one of the techniques that I teach in the new version of the swing trade course that I'll start with the Tharp Institute, because that gives you a way to interpret price action in a way that leverages the power of mechanical signals to get you started. So you use mechanical signals to help you find these critical states like this, and then once you frame that trade and then it starts working in these periods, you can start using our standard sense making and interpretation to help you stay with the trend and to reinforce it whenever you have these kinds of opportunities. So SPXL trades identically to SPY because it has to, otherwise there would be arbitrage opportunities. And so if the SPY itself is in a critical state, well then all of the derivative symbols that trade identical to it would also be in a critical state, and that's what we have here with SPXL. So Rich is making a sound judgment that he can frame the the more volatile piece and get a larger percent return and get some leverage on his money. So let's zoom into the 30-minute chart. So what he's given us is the weekly, daily, and I like the 30-minute chart for the same reason I like the 1-hour chart, but I like the 30-minute chart even better because it gives you more data points during the day, and it allows you to take advantage of something like the fast frog, or the quick frog, we should say, because you get the first 30-minute bar in, and then breakouts from that become probable frog entries. And on the 30-minute chart, you get some very clear signals in the MACD histogram. Like this one, you have a transition from winter to spring, a short winter, and then the second leg of the spring. This is the one I like because it acts like a Kata 2. So that pattern that helps us understand price, well, it also helps us understand and interpret the MACD. Now, what's beautiful about this is that if you were just looking at the price action here, you wouldn't necessarily see that as a Kata 2. In fact, you wouldn't, because you have a swing low and a lower low. So that's not a Kata 2 yet. You don't get the Kata 2 until you see this. So you see one low and a second low. But the Kata 2 on the MACD histogram shows you that the pain of the sell-off is lessening, because on this winter it got this deep and then gave you a short spring, which was here. So in this period, price broke even. It actually had some buying pressure, a couple waves of buying pressure. Now, it didn't hold, and in fact it broke below here, but the follow-through to the downside was much shallower than the previous sell-off in the winter. So this is actually showing you a useful divergence in the form of a Kata 2. So now when you see the Kata 2 revert back to the spring here, now you can take this trade with more confidence as as an SSC. And you could take this trade with more confidence as a Kata 2. Now, the follow-through was not great, but what you got was all of the move intraday, because you started at the 30-minute chart and you're able to get the entire move of the day, which goes from 118 to 121 which is a 2% move on a day when the market only netted about 0.8%. And the same thing here. So that 30-minute chart and the leveraged S&P and the use of the MACD Four Seasons to show that COTA 2 turns out to be a very nice way to see that the selling was slowing down, that the sell-off was losing force, and then that gives you more confidence about playing the SSC on the rebound move. Well, it had two shots. It has not really left the support area, but this is close enough that if you did take the breakout here, you would have a reasonable expectation of getting back to almost 121. So I would almost add that as the, reward 1, 2, and 3 for a risk of 1. And then on the downside, you can see that if this thing is going to fail, on the daily chart, you can see if that's going to fail, it's going to come down and test 114, which is well below here. And if that fails, then it comes back here to 110 in another big chunk. So the downside will take care of itself. And what's nice is that you've got this little rollover starting to happen, right? So a rejection of the zero line. But if that works, then you would see it get north of this, and then it starts coming back to 122, 124, and even 126 on the daily. So the upside has multiple legs to the upside as well. So that's what makes this such an interesting trade. And we saw from the Friday night report that the overreaction and channeling signals are triggering, and those are high probability reversal swings to the upside. So despite all my doom and gloom about this sell-off, it's still well above these rising support levels, and that's a natural place for it to resume. So that's the argument for the upside. And then if it gets above 126, then all is forgiven, and off we go. Because that's the all-time high. And once you breach the all-time highs, like it did on the weekly, you can get some amazing moves. That's a 30% move on this instrument, which is a 10% move on SPY, gives you a 30% move on SPXL. SPXL. All right. So this one has tons of potential. So nice work from Rich to frame this one up. And if we get the market call right, then that's 50% of the, the total game. I'm pleased to see I remembered to record. So this is already starting better. All right, let's go to Ken H's series. So this one is this Palantir? Yep. So Chi Weng Chung offered this trade frame. So we want to say thanks. That's the power of the mastermind. That's going to be one of the topics that I present on Monday. I'm doing the THARP podcast, and I'm going to be talking about the power of masterminds and the use of true storytelling circles to create the kind of safety, trust, truth, and that leads to opportunities like this when you can exploit the power of our networked collaboration. I'm pleased to note that Ken H. is joining me in a certification workshop starting the week after that we'll be doing with a bunch of key leaders from Army University, but also a variety of senior executives from South America and Europe to explore the use of true storytelling and creativity to generate opportunities. So I'm really excited to work on that. I will be a teaching assistant and assistant instructor to Dr. Boji and the team. So we're looking forward to rolling that out because that will be the basis for the course on the same subject that I'm going to be teaching. And I talked with Van today about incorporating true storytelling circles and collaborative learning for mastermind development as part of a practical coaching program inside the Tharp Institute course catalog. And he's fully supportive of that, so we'll be looking to roll that out. That's going to be a very powerful workshop, and we're not going to teach it that many times, I think, in a year, but because it's time intensive. So when the announcement for that comes out, I'll try to give you a heads up so you can first come, first serve. So again, thanks to Chu Weng Chong for that trade frame, and Ken was able to get, here's a swing low, higher low, higher low. So this would make this a perfect kata 2. He gets the second leg up where he waits for the Z3 pinch breakout and then basically uses the upper limit of this sideways chop. He uses that as his support level because what was once resistance can often become support, and so he's able to have a tiny risk and then is able to lock in almost 2R gain on that one. The second entry was a minus 0.7, but then the reversal happens. He takes this one as a way to protect against that loss. So, and that's really good practice because you have this. This is almost like a blow-off top. You had some serious grinding in here on the day charts, and then you have that extraordinary move. If that was going to follow through on Friday, you would not have expected it to roll over and come all the way back. So I like the fact that Ken says, let me cut that because I know how to re-enter. I would be looking at re-entering somewhere around 29 with a tight stop, maybe a 30-cent stop as a continuation play. But the risk of the downside is too much because you could end up giving back all of that by holding it over a long weekend. So I think this is really good form. And I just want you to notice, again, the power of kata 2 and the fact that you don't have to be perfect on that. You can wait for additional confirmation. So that's some pretty good work, as usual, from Ken H. Next one we've got is natural gas, and he's using a 30-minute and a daily. So natural gas has just been on a tear. The intraday moves are orderly enough that you can actually get some reasonable entries. I like this one where he saw one sideways channel, a second day of sideways channel that held with a higher low, and he was able to get the next day's gap up with confidence, and using the bottom of the channel as his risk, he's able to get 3.3. And what I like here is that he notices the gap up, which peaks, and it's outside the Z3, and then doesn't hold, and then he waits for the low of the day and says, enough is enough, and nails what is available. Now, I like the fact that it's holding here, which is slightly higher than here. We could almost pitch that as a Z3. So I think I would be ready once more on the this sideways choppy breakout, and then I'd play the first position to 1950, and then only add a second position once it had cleared this one. But that's a tradable range. That's from essentially 1850 to 1950. That's $1 of gain against about 30 cents of risk. So that gives you a 3-to-1 to the upside as a continuation. And until we see this upward channel really violated, then you have to respect the power of that trend as in the energy space. So nice work from Ken H. Taking what's reasonably there, not trying to squeeze every penny, but he's keeping a light hand on the reins, and he's able to navigate pretty nicely. I really like that. All right, next one up is URNM, the uranium. And you can see Ken has been trading the crap out of this thing. Missed the important one here. That when you have that kind of Z3 explosion and you get the consolidation zone, even when you cash that win, that next piece can really be amazing, right? And that's so. This trade here is that trade, and this move, this consolidation, and then the breakout is the one that he didn't get. He gives this one a shot, gets to no lose plus dinner for 2, and then it rolled back and stopped. And then he tries this one at no lose, and again it has a false move. No lose plus dinner for 2. He gets this piece. This one already feels like the explosive run is done, and this has the characteristics of almost speculative frenzy at the top of a move that went from 50 to 100. And what he noticed was the percent change in the watch list, and so that little extra move is what alerted him to the first piece. And remember, that's from 60 to 80. So he got the 33% move, which paid off really well. 15R, 13R, an additional 2R. That's what 30R looks like. So he's not chasing, but I just want you to notice that the characteristic of the price action in this area is much different than it is here. So this is much more of a tactical frenzied trade. So I don't mind him taking the little shots, but also if it's not immediately paying off like it did down here, he's saying, hey, don't need it. So I think the first piece, the initial vigilance and due diligence of getting it on that move, was really well done. And there was some opportunity trading in here that he got some pieces on it and didn't get crushed. So good lessons learned there. And that's interesting to note that these last two, uranium and natural gas, are all in that kind of that energy space, the alternate to oil. And so really nice work, Ken H., as usual. Just full of praise for you. All right, next one up is Arc Genomics, which has had a really nice recovery run a couple times here. It's made a recovery run on the daily from 82 to 90, and then off to the next 79 to 88. So those are like 10 to 12% bounces. And really this one happens twice. And so this one established, so this little cluster looks just like this cluster. Solid buying and a turnaround point, and this little cluster of 4 to 5 days of failure to fail further, we would call that failure to fail further. That is information. Even though in these pieces it hasn't bounced yet, until it does, that failure to fail further tells you that that previous sell-off may actually just be done. And now on the daily, it's just consolidating into the winter, but when you go to the hourly, notice that the winter has become spring and just turned to summer, and he gets that right at the turning point. And now what he's got is, long at around 82-ish, with about $1.50 of risk. And it's now at 84-ish. So he's got about 1 R in hand. And now he's about a third of the way up the stack. I would count this as the three, the three wise men here. Here's the first group getting it to the edge of the dragon. The second scoop would get him to the top of the river and the Pisar, so that's the second group. And then the third leg up would be the full expansion and recovery to the previous hump of the RL10. Now, if it gets that far, this is an amazing swing trade, right? If it doesn't get that far and starts failing anywhere in these little regions, then he's going to cash a nice win. A tactical win that did not have the explosive follow-through. But if it can get through 88, then you realize this is really thin resistance, and then the next target is up here at 92, which is the hump of the dragon, or up here at 94, which is the hump of the RL10. So that would make this just leg 1, and this leg 2, and that leg 3. So this could really turn out to be an amazing move if the other market participants cooperate. So we'll see. And he's got this locked in nice. I would be advising, if this starts moving up at all, I'd have this stop locked into here to the Z3 line altogether, because then I think that becomes the support level. Like this is thin in here. There's a gap, so you don't want this thing to be up here and then to roll back below there, because that would be the signal to go short with a collapsing dragon, wouldn't it? Yes, it would, because there's a collapsing dragon. So as soon as he can, if it starts moving in his direction, I would be getting that locked in to here. And then if he gets past 85, I might even think about a second position to exploit this move to 87. I think because this is pretty thin resistance. So this is where I think I want to get that going. All right. Next one is CRISPR. And again, fortune favors the brave. He had noticed support, where the RL10 reverses, and framed a nice critical state trade, because every time that support held and it breaks above the PSAR, you get an amazing move, which he's gotten one time. Didn't take this one. He had other things going on. But now he gets this move in the usual way. Check. And then it blows right through the resistance, blows through the second level of resistance, and now he's holding this, and he's got his stop here. I'm just going to say, Ken, look, dude, let's get that locked in right here, because that resistance is now support, right? And I don't want to give back that. Why? Don't give that back. Because if this fails right here, you know it's going to start looking like this, that return to this support level. So let's get this moved to here, lock that in. I would wait for a second position until it gets above this dragon here, right? And that's at like 127.5. And then if we looked at the big chart, that's really just getting a second position in here. He's showing it at 126, maybe getting a second one here. I think I might want to wait for that one, but I trust his judgment on that one. I mean, that gives you about 1 R in hand. He should already have it in. So since we're already past that point, I think, I think I would just wait for 126. And then, 130 is in range, and the next hump of the dragon, 134. And those daily charts, that move can happen pretty fast. This whole move happened in 3 days. And you can see what happens on one day. So somebody was buying the heck out of that. Well, I'll tell you who's buying the heck out of that is everybody that's buying ARC Genomics. Because on the weekend report, you noticed that everything got smashed on Friday except all of the ARC funds and S&P Biotech. So this is everybody buying biotech as one place where the disruptor technology is still showing some energy. So this is a winning position and could really become explosive as ARC continues to hold up well. So nice work there. He comes across this one based on reverse engineering the ARC ETF. So very nicely done. Let's see. All right, so this is Twitter. Yeah, this one is just classic recovery from oversold conditions. He's got one piece way back here in the day. There was the re-entry. 1, 2, 3. Oops. This consolidation zone. There's your collapsing dragon. Oops. There's a second collapsing dragon. Oops. Doesn't matter. The market does not remember the ones you don't take. It doesn't care. It's just giving you more and more opportunity. So it finds support around the round number of 60, just like it did here when it went from 60 to 70, which is a 15% move. And there was already some buying support here. And so that makes 65 within range. And he gets the nice entry at around 60. Hold support. Held here. And then on the recovery run, which looked really good going into Friday, he gets a stop moved up into here. And then, really, if this thing takes off above here, your real decision is where do you add a second position. It's either above this resistance or right above that one. I might take like 63 and wait for it to clear this and then go. Because once this is left behind, then this is very thin resistance, and that support is now the resistance, so that makes 65 in target. So that would give you an extra $2. And if you get this entry here, you're only going to do about a 50-cent risk anyway. So that gives you 4 or 5 to 1 inside this little region. And then if it gets above 65, man, now suddenly 66 is in range, and then you're into this whole chop. So this is just perfectly played hourly chart SSC from oversold conditions where the daily report showed strong support, and he just plays it on the hourly trade and bang. This is a case where good things happen to a good person. So nicely played again. I mean, how good is his gift? It really is good. And, thanks to him for showing us the applied techniques. It's more persuasive when Ken shows you what he's doing based on what we've worked out and not me. So he's doing this for a living. I'm teaching it as part of my living, but so much praise for him. All right, so TEX, this is the directional technology bear. So this is the opposite trade to the SPXL, which was the 3X long side. If that trade fails, then this one is the 3X inverse. So again, you can see the critical state that was formed, and based on some weakness on Friday, Ken goes ahead and takes that trade already in and is betting on an initial burst of weakness on Monday. So if this happens, then his trade will become deep in the money, and that will trigger Rich's trade on the short side in SPXL. And then you could either execute that trade in SPXL or just use TEX. So nice work. And then you can see that this will be the next resistance level. And at $4 a share, it's deceptively inexpensive. So this is a nice open position. If this starts failing, I would get my stop to no lose plus dinner for too fast. And the reason for that is because the market itself, and the strongest sector in the market is the Qs and XLK, so that's tech. The market has sold off to a channeling and an overreaction condition, which gives it a high probability of a recovery move. If that recovery move starts happening, then this thing is going to fail fast. So I'm not going to stick around on this one, but if it doesn't start working right away and starts to fail out of there, then this one should have a nice sharp burst for one more day to get up into here, and that's going to be a big payoff. So that's one that I would watch very, very closely because of the market effect. Okay. All right, this is XPEV. This is a Chinese solar auto manufacturer, and it has experienced kind of along with the Tesla craze. This was riding the Tesla wave, and now it's just kind of chunked into some chop. Ken's been able to get some nice swings on this one, and here is let's map this out one as a support level, support level, support level in the turning points in the RL10. And so he gets a 1, 2, 3 entry on this one. I'm going to zoom in and look at that one so you can see what a 1, 2, 3 entry looks like. All right, so here is your support levels at the turning points of the RL10. And look, in every case, you're getting a nice rebound from that price level. That's the Chinese government supporting their own technology company for the long run. That's a strategic buying level for them. What's your actual risk? Not much. Are they going to suddenly stop supporting a state-sponsored solar vehicle manufacturing plant? They are not. So this one looks like here's a bar 1 where it made the swing low. Bar 2 closed here and made a higher low, so that makes this bar 2, that makes this bar 1, and now it opens here and takes out the high of bar 2, that makes this bar 3. So he gets this entry and he decides to take his support level here at the belly of the RL10. So about $1 of risk. Nice. And where could it get to without controversy? Here. The far side of the river at 41. So if he gets the move from 38 to 41.50, that's plus $3.50, and he's taking a 50-cent risk. 7-to-1 reward to risk, which means that if this thing, as he's shown, gets above the dragon at around 39.50, he would have had 1, 2, 3 units of reward against his 50-cent risk. And so he could actually get his second position here with 3R in hand and momentum, and then you still got 1, 2, 3 to the upside, and that's how you build that position, right? So that's what the 1, 2, 3 entry looks like on the daily. Well, when you see those kinds of favorable patterns on, the higher time frame, you can then drill down and maybe do some more. And so what he's got here is the support level and the 1, 2, 3 entry. That all happens in here. And notice that gives him kind of like a Kata 2. This is like a Kata 2 entry on that shorter time frame. I think, is this hourly? Yeah, this is on the hourly. So he's got the swing low, a higher low. He could have gotten that in there, but I don't mind waiting for the breakout above this, because now you have closed this gap, and now he gets his entry here, and all he's done is given it to no lose plus dinner for 2. So he's got his risk out of this already, but it already closed well. It got beyond the far side of the river and out of the floodplain, and now the Z3 marker is closely in play, and which is the height of the dragon. And so here was resistance that became support, and here was resistance, and so all it's got to do is get through this, and that's where a second position should be taken, because it will have cleared what was formerly resistance, and then it gets up to this level pretty quick. So that move from there should go 1, 2, 3 pretty fast. And then that kind of a move is the second leg. So if this was leg 1, then that would be leg 2. And then guess what happens if this thing gets above 42? Off it goes, and then you could add a third position up in there, north of 42. And then you think it can get to here and to here reasonably. So really nice work combining the time frames and just using a careful trade framing approach, identifying his risk, looking at 3-to-1 reward to risk, making the play. And I like the way he's managed his risk. And this is another one where I would just say, now if it doesn't get through 39.50, if it starts rolling over here, or it gets up to 39.50 and starts rolling over there, I wouldn't let it come all the way back to here. Even if you just took half, fine. So that's some tactical trade management he's got to sort through. And I don't mind. How many times do I want to take that trade? All of them. I don't mind it if it fails in here and I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid. Helps the stats. Nothing wrong with that. You take what the market will give you. How much money's in the pot when you win? All of it. How much money that's in the pot do you get when you win? All of it. You can't control how much money gets put in the pot by other people, but you can decide to win the pot. GDRX, this is a tech sector, health information services, kind of a business to consumer and business to business holding company. Here's an example of when the resistance broke, you get that immediate sharp move. He's been trying to get on board this micro win. Nice win on 2 positions that nets 4. Nice re-entry. Maybe could have been earlier, but that's fine. And a good scratch. There was an opportunity to get back in. He waited to see it get above the Z3. I don't mind that at all. Here's the nice move on this trade, and he's raised his stop from here to no lose plus dinner for 2. Again, and this has already started to roll over a little bit. That move has been so nice But yeah, I like 45.76. That gives it a little bit of room to breathe. Nothing wrong with that. I would look at, I think I'd look at 48 as a second position, because once it gets above here, that move that's not resistance right there. That was just a panic selling. The resistance is up in here, so that means everybody that bought it up in here that has lived through all this suffering is not going to sell until they get all their money back. So that's why I'd like to get a second position around 49 and let that run to 56. Now you'll have cleared the previous Z3. That's a good place to get a second position, and that would make this one really pay off well. So really nice work as usual. All right, that's everything from the trade frames that are posted. Just a hat tip to Rich and Ken H. and Chi Wing Chong for supporting the team with their due diligence and their collaborative learning. Just really, really powerful stuff. What I'm going to say on Monday, just to give you a heads up for some of that stuff. These are some of the charts that I'm putting together. I'm going to be talking about these big topics. Why do we care about critical states in trading? I'm going to really reinforce that. I'm going to talk about how to develop a coach's eye. And that really intrigued Van a lot today at lunch when I was describing the work I've been doing on coaching. See, I take the high school soccer team model approach to coaching. There's a lot of other models. There's sort of business executive coaching, the usual. There's Army coaching, which is part of our leader development model, which is very structured and formal, and it is informed by a very strong hierarchy and rank and a conservative culture. But that's a legitimate model. There is the instructional coaching model that's used in education a lot. And what that one says is if you have a master coach and that person is coaching the teacher who is teaching the students, right? So this is a teacher, this is a master teacher. What happens is the practice that we're trying to improve is the way the teacher coach is teaching the student or the player or the trader. And so the instructional coach has expertise in the skills that the student is trying to learn, but also has skills in the teaching and also has skills in coaching. So what we're trying to do is pass on the coaching qualities, the skills to be a good coach in this instructional coach, so that it improves the teacher's teaching, because we're going to help work on the skills that you're using to impart to the student, but we're also going to help that teacher develop a coaching mindset so that the relationship between student and teacher becomes more like the high school soccer coaching. So the way we do that is when I'm coaching my high school soccer players, the very first thing that I recognize is that my players don't have to play for me. All right? They're choosing to play. So the first thing I want to know is, why do you want to play soccer and what are your goals? What's your motivation? Because I want to understand. So I ask them that question so that I can understand their motivation, their goals and purposes. And what do they want to get out of this, for the future? What's that future state look like? Because I have seen futures in soccer and leadership, and I may be able to help them see various futures that now soccer playing and leadership and teamwork is simply one means to get to direct goals, but also can support them with life goals. So one of the things that the coach can bring to this relationship is the vision of other possible futures as well, but it starts with an understanding of what future does the player see and what is that energy of motivation that makes them want to play. Maybe they haven't even sorted out things like goals and objectives and purpose. And if I see that, I can say, hey, let me talk to you about how we can make goals that will help you in your stair step to get to these various futures. And let me use guided questioning to help elicit from you some of these different possible futures. And so in that way, by starting with the player's point of view and asking those good questions about purpose and motivation, then we can help craft a collaborative path for the player to build towards that future. Well, the next step in that thing is to say, I ask the player, I say, I want you to imagine the ideal relationship for you between you and me, between you and your coach. And so I ask the player, I say, what qualities do you want to see in your coach? So I ask the player, what do you want to see in me that you think would help you develop more as a player? And then I ask them, look at what kind, I ask them to say, now adopt the point of view of a coach and say, if you were a coach, and all my high school players are going to be coaches for me because they help me coach the younger kids. I say, hey, part of your professional development here, part of your soccer player development is to help me teach the younger ones how to be like you because you're an amazing player. So when we're running that soccer camp and you're helping me with our practices in the academy, I want you to think like a coach and say, what kinds of qualities do you want to see in those subordinate players? Oh, well, coach, they listen, they pay attention, they try hard, they have fun, they're good teammates, and all that stuff. And I say, all right, now I've helped them adopt a coaching mindset, a coaching point of view. They are working on developing a coach's eye about players. And I say, now that you put that together, you now have a checklist to assess yourself as a player. I said, just think back to how you are as a player in practice and in games and with your teammates, and how would you score yourself on the qualities that you say you would want to see in a player if you were a coach? And then I say, evaluate those qualities that you want to see a coach, evaluate me, because I'm going to think about how well do I meet those qualities that you're looking for. So what we're doing is between the coach and the player is that we are defining the terms of reference, the frame of reference, and now we have an open exchange of information as two members of the same team, each playing their own particular role. But now what we're doing is building a collaborative culture that defines the relationship between the things that we're going to judge on the basis of the things that we say are important. So when you start putting all that together, you start building a collaborative learning and growing and coaching and playing environment that has each of us contributing to the co-creation of that learning and developmental space. Well, that's what I call the high school soccer coaching model of coaching. And that is actually different in some important ways with traditional business executive coaching and with the Army coaching model and the instructional coaching between a master teacher and a teacher. Because in that one, we expect the master teacher to know what needs to be done and to have broken down the skills of teaching into all these learnable pieces and then send these pieces over to the to the teacher and then say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do this, and then I'm going to observe you doing it and give you feedback about how you're doing it. But you can see that this is kind of a one-way instructional model. Now, that's a very effective way to break down the tasks of teaching so that they can get better, but it doesn't necessarily require that same kind of collaborative relationship that you see between a player and a coach on the soccer field. So what I'm doing is putting together a course and lessons that examine what we mean by a coaching eye, and that's going to incorporate things from business executive coaching, Army coaching, instructional coaching, high school soccer coaching, and then a fifth model, which is called the protreptic, which is a Greek word, which comes from the tradition of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. That's how those guys trained the philosopher kings of ancient Greece, like Alexander the Great. And it is a particular style of coaching that looks more like high school soccer coaching than any of these other models. Because what it does is it sets up the protreptic coach and the partner, or the person that's being coached, and then the partner comes into the discussion space with something that they want to work on, and then through a series of guided Socratic questions, open-ended, the partner explores what we mean, what that person means by those things inside their own frame of reference. And the protreptic coach is really just like Diogenes the wise man or whatever, is just shining a light, let me try to draw like some kind of light bulb, and so it's shining a light onto the things that the partner brought into the space. So in this sense, it's collaborative, but the protreptic coach doesn't pretend to be an expert on all of those things that the partner's bringing in. Like in high school soccer coaching, I am an expert in soccer. And instructional coaching for teachers in a professional setting, I'm an expert. But protreptic coaching takes on the qualities that says the partner is the subject matter expert in whatever issue it is that they're working on. That's where the expertise arises, and the role of the protreptic coach is simply to be a good sounding board and illuminator and a person with integrity and critical thinking and critical creative questioning that helps shed light for the partner on the issue that's being brought into the coaching circle. So the coaching course I'm going to put together for Van and the Tharp Institute and our folks in our community of practice is how to do that stuff. Well, one of the ways that you can engage in that protreptic coaching circle is to adopt the principles of true storytelling. So let me show you, since I'm here. What we do in the true storytelling circle, let me zoom in on this a little bit more, is that in true storytelling, and this is the workshop that Ken H. and I are going to be attending, and I'm bringing in 5 or 6 senior Army leaders to work with us, as well as the other folks from South America and Europe. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to create a true story circle. And it begins with establishing safety so that the things that happen in this sacred story space are protected, and that the people who enter and go through like a foyer and a coffee talk and then enter a sacred story space in which the people in that circle are exchanging personal stories with emotional impact about whatever story seed that we're talking about. And then in that sacred story space, when people are in that and shedding light into that space, everybody's bringing in personally significant and meaningful things that are, and then the act of sharing that makes this a sacred story space. We don't record it. We don't give feedback or guidance or recommendations or advice. We are simply there to witness each person telling that sacred story for the first time and letting that story breathe and just letting it be what it is. And then when we are done exchanging those important stories, and then we go into the foyer and coffee talk and debrief and whatever, and then it inevitably turns out that the things that we've shared in that story space end up coming back to us in ways that are enlightening and that help us see other opportunities in the world, which could be done in workshops or the building of tools or in collaborations. But it's the sacred story space built on safety, trust, truth that leads to the opportunities. And when you have a shared sacred story space together, it allows you to do things like circumnavigate the elephant. So when we talk about circumnavigating the elephant in the true story tradition, what we mean is that you, the person, with your own expertise and knowledge of your head, heart, gut, hands, and feet, you approach this sacred story space, and opportunities can depart in any direction. And in that sacred story space, what's happening is all of these things. That you can stay in that roundabout, that place of safety, trust, and truth, and then all of these R words, which leads to big R, those are returns. Well, suppose as a result of that, you saw an opportunity to do something complex. And I render that as the elephant. And I don't know if you've ever seen an elephant, especially if you're a blind man, you haven't seen an elephant. But one of the things that we're trying to understand is the complexity and the totality of an elephant. And if you're this person, all you can see is through your aperture. You can see that much of the elephant. You can't see that stuff over here. But if you were in a collaborative learning space with people that had grown up with you and established safety, trust, and truth, and the opportunities to get better together, then you could actually circumnavigate the elephant with trusted others. And because you have the ability to exchange stories with truth and honesty and integrity, then what you have is not a collection of individuals around, but you actually have a learning network of collaborative, cooperative teammates, a mastermind. And then you can simultaneously see that elephant from many different directions and then see what might be done. Now, if you don't have that collaborative network of people, what you have to do if you really want to understand the elephant is you have to see it from your point of view, deliberately offset, gain expertise in this perspective, and then look at the elephant, and then move and look at the elephant from this angle, and move and look at the elephant from that angle, move, see the elephant from that angle. And it takes time for you to develop the expertise in looking at the elephant through this point of view, because if you're an amateur, you're going to get it wrong. So you have to spend some amount of time in each one of these locations in order to develop a confident, coherent view of the elephant from that point of view. And it takes time to travel. And when you're traveling and learning this point of view, all you're doing is maintaining a memory of what it was like over here, but time has passed, and guess what? The elephant is moving. It's dynamic and changing. So if it took 5 years for you to develop these other points of view, it takes 5 years to develop expertise in the professions in the world. You got to get a master's degree and have a couple years of practice under the tutelage of a mentor to really have effective technical knowledge in the world. If you did that 5 times, it might take you 25 years to circumnavigate the elephant. And how much could the market change in 25 years while you're trying to develop those points of view and expertise? A much more efficient way to do that is to establish a comprehensive, collaborative, trustworthy network of people who are in it for each other's benefit as well as their own. And in that mutual exchange, you have a mastermind effect that allows you to begin to appreciate the elephant. I am convinced we don't ever understand the elephant because the market is too complex anyway, but we can appreciate many things about the elephant. And what you're seeing, even with tonight's little podcast, was that trust relationship between Chi-Wing Chong and Ken H to share trade frames. You see Ken H offering you safe, trustworthy trade frames that are his. And he's sharing that with you to show you what the power of that mastermind, but also to encourage you to do the same. So when I ask you to post your charts so that you can get feedback, it's not just so that I can give you feedback so you can develop expertise yourself from your point of view, although that's primary what I'm doing, but it's also in the way that I give that feedback and other people can hear it, and you have the courtesy to share those lessons with others, that I'm teaching one, but I'm actually teaching many to look through that lens. And so in that way, as you participate in the chat room or in your small learning groups, in any form, it doesn't have to be in the chat room, but you find trusted others, if you can imbue those relationships with safety, trust, and truth, then you will be astounded at the number of opportunities that will emerge to leverage the power of the elephant, trading and the markets, to do work. That elephant wants to work. He can change the world, and you can harness that power with respect for the elephant and treating the elephant well. And that's the kinds of reflections we get in our roundabouts. And it turns out that this point of view that I call circumnavigating the elephant, I made a presentation on this at the International Society for Organizational Development and Change to about 300 scholars of organizational change management, and they're knocking down my door to figure out how they can do this and how they can learn to do that. So the workshop that I'm going to do with Ken H. and the folks at True Storytelling Institute is part of that being unrolled. So the combination of this plus that coaching information is going to be part of the developmental program that I'm going to do through VTI, also myself, but also with VTI. And that's one of the things Van and I were talking about. One of the things that actually happens when you do this, and so since we're here and I'm just going to share it anyway, is that if you just did a top-down view of that sacred story space, right, and that whole process, if you only think in 2 dimensions, sometimes it feels when you're in the story circle, you're just going around in circles. And the reason you do that in the roundabout is so you can do all those R words like rest, recover, relate, restory, repurpose. And then you feel like, well, I'm going to go then do workshop. I'm going to go to my own workshop to work on myself or develop tools to help me work on myself or in the world. But what's actually happening is if you adopt a 3-dimensional point of view, is you realize what you're doing is when you're going around that circle in a positive way and you're raising energy of truth, you're actually spiraling around this thing and you're gaining new perspectives and height. And what used to look like obstacles, you get taller that and you realize, oh, that thing is just narrow, and I can look over that into opportunities that this was blocking when I was down here. Or if I'm going this way and then this wide obstacle is blocking me, once I get altitude, I can see, oh, there's ways around that to get into those opportunities. So what happens in the story space is things that were blocking you from your own point of view, you start hearing stories from others that gives you ideas about how you can collaborate and learn from that through reflection. When you hear the truth of others and how they've overcome obstacles and seized opportunities, and you partner with people, you get so many new ideas and possibilities and opportunities that you just can't stand it. I mean, it's just, as long as you just approach this in sort of a gentle but relentless effort, you just keep spiraling your way up the hill. Pretty soon you and your team sees nothing but opportunities because the obstacles diminish. Those obstacles cannot possibly contain you, and the energy that is released is generated in these sacred story spaces. The act of creating a sacred story to come in and share generates energy for you. When you tell that story, it releases even more energy to you. And then you can repurpose that energy to create tools or seize opportunities in your own workshop or attending other workshops or trade, whatever. The workshop is the place where work is done. I'm not saying that as a, education work, but where you're doing the work of your life is you bring tools and technique into that place of work, and then you go change the world with the energy and the insights that come from that sacred story space. This is unbelievably powerful stuff, guys. So when we talk about the specifics of the true storytelling process, which is what Ken H. is going to learn, Dr. Boji, who's my doctoral mentor for the last 20 years, and I'm a postdoc student for him, helping him document what he means by true storytelling. He identifies 7 principles of true storytelling. It starts with the truth of the stories that are there. You then learn to make space for the stories of others as long as your own. And then you examine the plots, and you learn how to deconstruct those, and you find alternate plots that can explain the same thing but in new ways and for repurposing, and that's where the opportunities come from. And then you apply timing so that you can phase those plots into certain checkpoints, and now you can jump to a new area and jump over obstacles, and then you tell those stories in chapters and phases. That's what timing does, is expands the plot into long-term programs of action. And then you learn how to ask for help along the way, and you get it from your mastermind because you're offering other people help. They just offer you help, and we go along together. And then staging is how we construct a supporting ecosystem that allows us to perform these stories along the way. And staging is what you do to set yourself and your team up for success by creating conditions in which success can occur. And then the final stage of reflection is how you take all of that stuff and bring it into a cycle of learning and then restoring, and you tell that into the next roundabout as a sacred story, and then that leads through safety, trust, truth, and it leads to other opportunities. And now you start getting iterations of going from story circle to story circle to story circle in a chosen path of restorying and repurposing your life that's consistent with your values and the change that you want to make in the world. My experience with this over the last 5 years has just been life-changing. And here's an example that I can talk about when I applied these principles to my own trading and business and education and teaching practice, that I was able to take the existing stories that were important to me and then learn how to expand them and repurpose. And so that's a working example that I'll offer to those guys, and that I'm happy to share in a true story circle with folks that are interested. So this will be part of the stuff that I talk about on Monday, and part of the new body of knowledge and whatnot that I'll be bringing to the Tharp Institute and our own practice. But that's why mastermind groups are powerful, and that's what I mean about developing a coaching eye. And we know from today's work about the importance of critical states, and then what to do when you have a hunch. You just do this. You frame the trade in the usual way and build out the standard structure for decision making, and you trust and respect the hunch because it comes from some place that's important. And the preparation as you've heard me talk about endlessly, is more important than the planning. The preparation is what you do about the plan so that you can set it up for success. And that's kind of goes along with what you do when you have a hunch. Well, you prepare to exploit the hunch. And so some of the other things that I'll talk about are little snapshots of lessons that we've learned in COVID, like why that turning point is so crucial. The dragon has moved and started to reverse, and you get the PSAR flip. That's the operational space right in there for the SSC. And then if you put a little more effort into it, you could see that with specific indicators that we use to build out the trade frame that allows us to exploit that trade in a standard way, and that we're not afraid of doing the work because we know that work will set you free. And that's what 3 generations of coal miners look like. Proud men working for their families, saw themselves as artisans and technicians, and they accepted their life and made a better life for their families through that hard work and application. So, and that's where mentally I go to refresh and reset and do my reflective thinking. That's a rock on the Pacific Ocean out there in Monterey that used, when I was teaching out there, on every weekend I would go down there and climb that and then sit on the top and listen to the whales and watch the ocean and just think about things. And that's my reflective space, and that's my mental theater, my visualization of that space. And I can smell the ocean salt and hear the whales and remember what it feels like to walk in bare feet along that, and then put my shoes on and climb that. It's a lot easier than it looks. You know, the easy way up is here, and then you walk the spine. But pretty nice place on the planet of Earth. And then this is kind of what we do here. We trade in the usual way, and sometimes good things happen to us. And if you have this, what would be your plan? How would you manage this trade if you were entered here with your initial risk, and it broke out above the VWAP and got above the Z3 and ran all the way up here on going into the close? This is at the end of the day, and you got that nice move. It was a VWAP magnet and beyond. How would you manage that trade? That's what it looks like intraday, but you've seen enough examples of that from Ken H's that could just as easily have been a swing trade with exactly the same behavior, and your interpretation and your response to it should be identical. The only thing that's different is the time cycle between each next bar. Sometimes that's a day chart, sometimes that's a weekly chart, sometimes that's a minute chart. The decision making is identical. The interpretation of the indicators and the trade framing is identical. And you know, my goal in life is to hope to put you into positions like this where you suffer with what to do with that position. I hope you suffer like that every day of your trading life. And if that happens, if you get to experience that kind of suffering, then I will have done my job and I will feel content. Okay? So you guys have just seen some of the most important parts of that briefing that I'm going to give on Monday. I've only got an hour to do that, and this took me 40 minutes, so it feels like I could probably get through that. This was the other piece that I briefed Van on, and that is how to incorporate the insights of Angus Fletcher's teachings, reliable teachings to raise creativity 70-80% is the way that we will continue to generate innovative ideas in the future in a world that is filled with elephants that are changing and dynamic. And so this is a model that I'm installing into the Army so they can understand what to do with innovation, what to do when you have a hunch. Well, you evaluate it on these 2 dimensions. That's what you do. So I'm working with Angus Fletcher on that to develop that into a nice program of action. That's going to be part of that developmental program I do with Tharp Institute too, formal coaching. So it's time to get on with that. All right, that's everything I got for you. Thanks for hanging in there and playing along. And I really genuinely appreciate the support and your willingness to share and support the team and to learn in public with the folks in this community of practice. The more you do that, the better you're going to be and the stronger that mastermind will become. And as I teach you to look through a coach's eye, you won't need me to be your coach, because you will be a coach of yourself and a coach for your peers and your partners in your trading circle, your accountability circle. And then I'd be happy to join them and be there, but you won't need me to be that self-actualized learning team. And you will change the world if you do that. I guarantee it. So hear me now and believe me later. Take good care, guys. That's everything I wanted to cover for tonight, and we will see you tomorrow for the trade framing, for the day trade frames and whatnot, and looking forward to that. Take good care. Hopefully you found that interesting. I'll stick around for a few minutes. I'm going to stop the recording